be here with us for the next 4 weeks. He's dipping into Habakkuk, a very short book. If you want to have a wee look at it beforehand, then by all means, feel free to do that. So the question I have for you this morning is, when you look out into the world, is it the way that God created it? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's perfect? Well, do you? No, fine. A half-hearted no there, I think, but no, just, yeah, that's right. You know, God created the heavens and the earth, and the refrain as he created was, God saw it was good. God saw it was good. At the end of the periods in which he created, he saw things were good. And in Eden, the garden, he planned to walk with man, to talk with man, and to have a deep, loving relationship with man. And you know, the problem wasn't the apple in the tree. It wasn't the pear on the ground. It was the snake in the grass. Because the devil has been trying to thwart the growth of God's kingdom right from the beginning. We look out into our streets. How many people do you see who are really happy and contented, who smile all along the way? I see a lot of sad faces when I'm out and about in the streets. How many people out there actually, do you think, love going to their work, bounce out of bed in the morning and to go there, put in a really good day's graft and come back? Or how many people do you think are truly, truly contented with their life? As Keith said a couple of weeks ago, talking about the Canadian businessman who was mega rich, but his life was empty, it does not have to be like that. God has a rescue plan for the world, a plan to save us, to create the new Eden, to give us life in its fullness. And our reading today is from John's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 1 to 10. Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore, Jesus said again, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief only comes to kill and destroy and steal. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Sounds good to me. It really, really does sound good to me. But first, the story. So there's a man lost in Ireland, Northern Ireland, and there's a farmer chewing his bit of hay, leaning on his wall, watching the world go by. Very slowly. It's a very quiet place. And the man says, how do I get to Belfast from here? And the farmer said, if I was going to Belfast, I wouldn't start from here, lad. And yet, we have to start where we are. We have to make a move from the place where we are at the moment. So the first question was, is the world as God made it? The second one is, do you think a world without boundaries, with no rules, no law, no regulation, would be appealing or appalling? Would it be a good thing or a bad thing? Hands up for it being a good thing. Hands up for it being a bad thing. Well, yeah, I think without rules, I think we would be in a very difficult place. God created the heavens and the earth. He parted the water from the sea. He made natural boundaries for the world. And if those natural boundaries are breached, we have floods and tsunamis, devastation, homelessness. You just have to look around the world. The earthquake in California yesterday and today, they are causing immense danger, immense destruction. When we break the rules that God set us, then we have disaster, despair, destruction in our lives, because God set those boundaries. The 10 Commandments, they're often said to be the minimum rules that a society needs to be civilized, because it honors God, sets thou shalt nots, the things that will hurt people, and calls us to look after others. So, back to the reading, sorry. Who here thinks they're living life to its fullness? You know, we live full lives, but are we living it to the fullness? Some people just love to live life in the fast lane. Not a free moment, filled with activity. A bit like this, okay? They get up, they have breakfast, they go to the gym, they return home, they take the kids to school, they get caught up in the morning rush hour, they're late for work, they rush into their first meeting. There are meetings back to back all morning, getting tasks to do but never actually doing anything. A quick bite of lunch with some friends to catch up on the gossip, then back to back meetings in the afternoon. They overrun at night. You hit the rush hour as you're coming home. You get frustrated. You don't have classic FM on, so there's no soothing music. You just get upset. You're late to get back to school for the kids. You get home, quick fast food meal out the microwave, and out to scouts or brownies or swimming or whatever you do with the kids, because you all do that with the kids. You take them out. And then you come back, kids go to bed, you got a glass of wine, you crash out on the sofa. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. And I know people who live that life. And then, a scant few hours later, the alarm clock goes off and it's all round again, a big cycle of things. Sounds familiar? I think it is. A full life is not necessarily life in its fullness. So what makes life worth living? What makes life the fullness that Jesus offers? Is it status, wealth, the big car in the drive, the big house, the 4.2 kids, the cat and the dog, all the material possessions you could ever want? Retail therapy every weekend, perhaps even winning the lottery. Was 180 million euros was won quite recently. That is a staggering amount of money. But many people who win the lottery write the stories and say, I wish I hadn't done that. It ruined my life. It changed my life beyond recognition. There's squabbles in the family about the money. Life is more than money and wealth and possessions. Now these things, homes and cars and kids and everything else, they're not bad in their own right. We have them in our lives because they bring happiness and peace and joy. But a lot of the things, like everything in life, is okay in moderation. If you have too much of the good things, it's still too much. The fullness that Christ came to give us is contentment, peace, joy, love, and most of all, for many, many people, meaning and purpose. A lot of people find their lives are meaningless. but not with Christ. Do you think that peace, happiness, joy, love, you think that's what adds to a fullness of life? Do you? Do you? Yeah, I think it does. Jesus came to turn the world upside down. He came to change meaningless activity into meaningful activity. He came to change the stressful life for a stressless life. He came for those who were rejected so that they could be accepted. He came for those with no purpose to give them purpose. He came to throw out the appalling and make it the world appealing. He's the Good Shepherd. He calls you out by name. God adores you. He knows you. He never forgets your name. I sometimes forget people's names that I've known for a long time. It just isn't there when my mouth opens to speak it. God never, ever forgets your name. In Jeremiah, we read, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. God knew you before you were born. Before you were born, he says, I set you apart. I set you apart for a special, meaningful relationship. And in Psalm 139, the psalmist says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. God watched you grow from the very tiniest of cells into the baby that came into the world, and loved to see you growing in fullness now, no matter what age you are. He's created you specially for that relationship. He knows your comings and goings. He knows your innermost thoughts. And he knows you by name. How wonderful is that? The Creator God knows you by name. Out in our streets, there are people who are not known by their name. They are ignored. They are rejected. They are unknown. And yet one of the greatest desires in the human heart is to be known and to be loved. And love, the love of God, the love of Christ in our life shared with others, goes an awful long way to recreating the kingdom as God would have it. Names are very, very important. Now, on the North Bridge in Edinburgh, before they put up all those high bits at either side, there was a young girl who was despairing in life. And she climbed over the parapet onto the very edge, ready to jump. And a crowd formed and they're going, don't do it again, come back. No, you'll regret it, step over, come, here, take my hand. And then a policeman came up, quietened the crowd, looked the girl in the eye and said, what do you want me to call you? What's your name? Because a name's a very personal thing. And the policeman was looking not at someone who was going to jump, but a young lass who needed help. And by using her name, she responded. You do that, don't you? Someone, you hear your name in the street, you go, who's that? Even if it's not someone who's speaking to you, your name is a powerful thing. God knows your name. The girl was brought over because the policeman saw her as a person and talked to her as a person. God knows you as individuals. How wonderful is that? Jesus calls us out of the world's sheepfold into his sheep pen, into his fold. And it gets better. Fullness of life means meaning and purpose. And meaning and purpose needs a plan. And God has a plan for each and every one of you. Have you ever thought about that? That God has a plan for you? Something that only you can do. Different from my plan, the plan he's got for me. You know, if we all had my plan, we'd all be up here speaking to empty chairs. That's not what God wants. You know, we all have an individual plan that only you only you can fulfill. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And that's what people need today, hope and a future. Isn't that wonderful? Lots of people don't have plans in life. They meander through, going with the flow here, there. They drift along one day to the next. They look at everyone that passes them by and they wish they could be like them, wish they had their lifestyles. Somehow they think that the grass is greener on the other side. Well, the only real green grass is the pasture that Christ will lead you to. Verdant, lush, everything that you need to fulfill your plan. The plan that God has for you. When you see other people, don't go and try and live their plan. Live your own. Because if God has a plan for you, then being at the center of that plan is the best place where you can be. And that will give you fullness of life, true meaning, true purpose, true peace, and true love. So what would Dalkeith look like if everyone here knew the fullness of life that God wants to give them? What would it look like? You know, I think it would be a wonderful place. I think everyone would be caring, courteous, kind. Everyone would be looking out for others because they wouldn't be jealous of what people have. They would be content with what they've got. There would be a sense of peace and calm that can only come from Jesus. He says that he will give you a peace that the world doesn't understand, a peace which transcends everything that passes our understanding. There would be no crime. You could leave your doors unlocked and your children could play safe in the streets and in the parks. And that vision is the Eden that God planned. And that would give us true prosperity. Because prosperity is not in the meaning, in material. It's in the meaningful relationships that we have with each other. And that, I think, is something that everyone would benefit from. But you're saying, you may be thinking, that can never happen. Well, it did. It's happened a lot. There was an Irish revival in 1859. So George Mueller had written a book about how God answers prayer. And it was such an inspiring book that the local minister, James McQuilkin, having read the book, decided to trust God in the answer to prayer. So he prayed for revival to break out in his town and throughout Ireland. And it did. It broke out and people shared the love of God, shared the life of God with others. Churches were packed. What was important was this, that conflict and divisions evaporated. The jails were empty. People became concerned for the poor, and the nation became like something new. Sounds good to me. Sounds a lot like Eden. It's the fullness that Christ desires for you. It's the fullness that Christ desires for Dalkeith, for Woodburn, for Easthouses, for Mayfield, for the whole of Scotland. And it comes when we listen to his voice, when we hear our name being called by the one who loves us unconditionally, and we go out following in his footsteps. That's the type of world I like to see. I hope it's the type of world that you would like to see as well. Amen. A prayer before our offering.